Hey everyone, so if you saw my May reading wrap up a couple of weeks ago, I'll leave a link in the top bit above for you. One of the books that I read throughout May was this one, the Heartstone Odyssey. I initially read it as a child and then I was reminded of it and I wanted to see if I could find it and read it again. I wanted to do a sort of in-depth review of this book. It's not very long, I think it's about 230 pages. 270 pages, so it's not a long story, but it's one that I think is important, and it's still important now as much as it was in the 80s when it was originally published. So this book deals with Chandra, who is an Indian immigrant living in London. Yep, that's it. Yeah, she emigrated from India when she was 5 with her father, moved to London to live with her aunt because her dad thought that she needed a maternal influence after her mother died. The story follows Chandra in her young adulthood. It never specifically says her age, however she is living in a flat on her own and she is earning money from doing traditional, I think it's Hindi dances, but it doesn't actually say. Her life is turned upside down one day when one of her dance recitals is cancelled due to the increasing racism within the area that she lives. She's understandably upset. She goes to a park, has a bit of a cry, but while she's there she is spoken to by a mouse called Hug Bundle, and this is what catapults the main part of the story and gets us into the actual nitty-gritty of what's going on. I will admit that this was a bit slow to get into. The first 50 pages or so about a fifth of the book, it was quite slow. A lot of information dumps, and it does drag on a little bit, and I thought that maybe I had misremembered how much I liked this book. However, I have given this 5 stars out of 5 on Goodreads, and this is mainly because it did actually live up to nostalgia, and it did live up to my expectations of this as an adult. So the book is quite simplistically written. The sentences aren't too complex, the words quite simple. Like I said, I read this at school. It was in our school library. I think I was 10 when I read this. I might have been a little bit younger because I know I read it a couple of times because I really did enjoy it, and it really did grip me, so I read this quite a few times at school. But that was sort of like the late 90s, early 2000s, and this book was published, I think it was 84. Copyrighted in 1985 but first published in 1988. I don't want to give too many spoilers away because I do think this is a really good book. It is the first in a trilogy, however the other 2 books have still not been published fully, but I'll get into that a little bit later. So the main takeaway from this entire book is how India was treated during the British colonialisation. So the Heartstone is originally a piece of, it's sort of like a gem that was in India, and due to the colonialisation it ends up being shattered slightly, and a mouse who was looking after it in India decides to bring part of it to Britain after a strange feeling that he needed to, whereas the rest of it was taken and hidden somewhere in India to keep it safe. With every good story you have the good versus the evil, so in this the good is definitely portrayed by the mice. So they've all got names like Hug Bundle, Moonbeam, I think one of them Snuggle Buns or something like that, one called Jasmine. So they're all very sort of nice, happy names associated with them, whereas the side that is trying to fight against them, there's a rat called Smirk Muzzle, there's 2 crows, I think one's called Screechfoot. Yeah, Screechfoot or Croak. Yeah, Screechfoot and Croakwing is what the crows are called. So not only does this story deal with the Heartstone and a prophecy related to it, it also deals with the deep-rooted racism within society. So like I said, Chandra has been dealt a lot of really terrible blows through life. Her story starts in this with her dance being cancelled because of the racism. So that is a really strong point within here, and the evil side, or the side of bad, is very much within that racist encampment of life. The thing that surprised me the most in this book, reading it back, was the extreme racist language used within this, especially as it seems to be aimed at children from its simplistic nature and its simplistic sort of sentence styles. It has a few instances of the N-word throughout the story, and it does also detail Asian people as calling them the P-word, but it does mention them quite a few times, which I think, even though it was published in the 80s and aimed at children, it's still quite a a startling thing to come across. When I first came across the words, I kind of was taken a little bit aback because I didn't remember reading that. Do I think that it's something that children should be reading? Maybe. The way that the words are used are constantly in a bad light, showing how they shouldn't be used. It's words that are offensive and disagreeable to people. It can cause upset and pain if you do use these words. Like I said, I read this when I was 10 and I remembered the story being quite racist, and I knew that the main character had to deal with quite a few issues, but I couldn't actually remember that much detail from it. I do think that this is a good story for children to read, to try and confront that racist element within society that's still prevalent today. So when I first started to reread this book again, one of the main things I noticed was the prose style and the way it was written, and I think that this book had a huge influence on my writing style as a child. There are some sentences that I feel like I didn't copy exactly, but the sentiment behind it, or the sentence structure, the flow of the words is very similar. I actually sent a picture to my mum going, well, I guess we know where I got my ideas from, or my writing style from, when I was a child. After the initial first 50 pages or so, which were quite slow to get into, I did find that the rest of the story did seem to speed up quite quickly. There's a lot of action going on, there's a lot of information. Yep, there is a lot of info dumps because there's a prophecy, and the prophecy can only be told by telling the story. There's a lot of history elements to it. So we've got part of the colonialisation being told through the story of a mouse, which is weird. And we've got a bit of information of like the modern day. But it does actually go quite quickly after the first 50 pages. And I found that I pretty much sped through this book within a couple of sittings. I think maybe in total I spent 4 or 5 hours reading this, which sounds like a lot actually, but I did get distracted with TV sometimes. The first 50 pages were definitely the biggest and most difficult part to get through, just because it is so much trying to ground the story and to get us to where we need to be to get to the prophecies. But I did really enjoy it, and I think that it is something that if you can get past the first 50 pages, stick with it, because it is really good. Like I said, this is the first book in a trilogy that deals with the Heartstone. I can't find the second and third book anywhere online. I couldn't find them, and then I stumbled across a website that deals with this. I know there's a charity being set up with it, and this was a self-published book by a publishing house called Allied Mouse. Got a little mouse there. So I sent them an email a couple of weeks ago asking them if the second and third book had ever been written / published, and if so, if there are any copies available. I received a response saying that they never actually published the second 2 books in this, but it's something that people have been requesting quite a lot, and I have been added to an email list for when they are released, so I will definitely be picking up a copy of those when I can get to it. They've said that with the current situation within the world and the lack of it disappearing, they think that this is something that needs picking back up urgently. However, they only have the funds available to publish the books after they've gone through all the charity expenses and everything else that they're doing, but they are trying to allocate more and more money to one side to get this done. I am actually hopeful that I'll be able to read the next 2 instalments of this book. I guess that this book, in a sense, would be classed as magical realism, mainly because there's talking mice, there's talking crows, there's talking rats. There is a dog, but I don't think that actually talks. I think that just hunts out the rats. Oh, there's talking swans. Pretty much most creatures can talk as long as you've paid attention enough to be able to understand them. Although it's written in quite a light-hearted way and manner, I think that the topics that it tries to cover are quite serious, and it's a strange sort of juxtaposition to see the serious topics presented in such a, not whimsical, but in such a it's not childish, maybe simple, treated in such a simplistic way. So they've been not dumbed down as such, but dropped to a level where there's greater understanding amongst everyone. And I think that the way it's done is such a way that it resonates and it connects, and it's definitely something that I think more children should read. I can't leave a link to buy this book anywhere because I don't think this is currently in print anymore. I bought this on Amazon. second hand. It is an ex-library book. It's got withdrawn on the front page. It's got its library sticker still on the back. It's been covered in plastic, I guess is the word. I bought it for £3 on Amazon. I think there are still some copies, but there aren't many of them, so if you do want to read this, I would recommend looking for it or searching for Allied Mouse Publications to get to that website that I mentioned, because they might have copies available for people to buy there. Yeah, I just really loved this book. I mean, I gave it a 5-star. I think it was my first 5-star of the year. Although I did find it a bit slow to start off with, and the prose is quite simple, it lived up to my expectations. It was able to deal with such a serious topic in such a way that makes it approachable and understandable for children, and I do think it is still a great book. I've not read it for 20 years maybe, and honestly I still loved it. Every single second I was like, oh my god, it's so good, and I was drawn in, and it got to the end and I was sad again that the other 2 books aren't there. This is a book that I will be keeping, and it's one that I will be definitely reading to my nephew or letting him read it. Although it does deal with racism and there is quite a lot of negativity coming down, I think the ultimate message of this book is hope. There's hope that the Heartstone will be joined back to its other pieces. There's hope that society in the UK will get past its racistness and become more accepting, and that people will be more accepted. And I think it's that uplifting message of hope that just makes the story so enjoyable, and I just love it. I just really, really love it, and I think everyone should read it. It is just wonderful. So if you can find a copy, please read it and let me know what you think. So if you enjoyed this review, don't forget to hit like down below, and if you want to see more videos from me, don't forget to hit subscribe. A new video is out every single Sunday at 4 PM. There's a range of book reviews, film reviews, what I've been reading, what my writing's doing, all the good stuff on this channel. There's also monthly vlogs, which you will have seen the first one of. It's already out. That was a random addition. So they're going to be out on the 2nd or 3rd of each month, depending on what day that falls on. If it's the 2nd and it's a Sunday, it's going to be on a different day, just because I'd like to still have the weekly videos opposite from the monthly ones as well. I hope you're all well, and until next time, bye!